So welcome, Wendy. Thank you for joining today. So for people that don't know Wendy Searle, she is trying to break a world record, and I will let Wendy explain more around that. But at Omnos, we are helping Wendy with kind of optimizing her health and performance to get her into the best place possible for trying to break this record. And we're really, really excited to be working with you, Wendy. And I think the base of this is we just thought your story was really, really inspirational, and would love you to kind of tell us a bit more about it. So firstly, welcome, and if you can explain a little bit more about what you're trying to achieve.
Thanks so much for having me. First of all, it's really exciting to be working with Omnos, and I'll come on a bit later about why that's so exciting. So I'm Wendy Searle. I was going to say I'm 42, but I'm not. I'm 45 this year, but I'm 44 now. And in 2020, I skied solo to the South Pole, and in doing so, became the 7th woman in history ever to have done that. And I'm going back for another go to try and break the world record to be the fastest. And to go from before I did that trip in 2019-20, I had come from kind of a very normal average background. I didn't come from a world of adventure. It wasn't kind of something that I'd done at school. I was pretty average at sport, and there was kind of nothing special or extraordinary about me at all. But actually what's happened is the expedition has been extraordinary, and it's really changed my outlook and actually my whole life. So I now work in the expedition sector, and the idea of going back to have another go at breaking to this time try and break the women's speed record, the premise of it is that I'm going to be looking at optimizing every single area of the trip. So when I went the first time, I learned obviously a huge amount about preparation and kit and training and nutrition when I was actually on the journey, the kind of mental resilience sort of tactics and tips that I used when I was out there to kind of get me out of the tent and get skiing every morning. But I think I can do every aspect of it, even small percentages, a bit better, and in some cases a lot better. And I looked a lot about my physical training last time, but this time I'm looking at the optimization of every single area, but also every single hour when I'm actually out there. So I'm doing obviously the physical training again, but I'm also working with a sports psychologist and a whole team of people who are helping me look at how I can optimize things like sleep, as well as nutrition. And that's kind of where Omnos come in as well, because I was kind of eating what I thought was sort of roughly healthy stuff, which is a good idea, but and it wasn't something that didn't work, but it definitely is something that I can look at from a more performance aspect, from a more athletic and endurance kind of perspective, in order to make it incrementally better. And so far the work that we've done with Omnos, I had some bloods taken, which was pretty painless, and then all the analysis of the nutrients, and it's just been fascinating to look at about how even if you're eating the right things, if you haven't got the right supplements or the right if you've got any deficiencies, then that can affect how your body's absorbing the nutrients or not. And actually both for the training and actually when I'm out on expedition, if I can optimize how my body's using calories and knowing which balance of calories to have and which balance of protein, fats and carbohydrates, then I just think that is such a key part, fueling your body during the training and the skiing. And the skiing is 10, 11, 12 hours of hard work dragging a sled, a pole that's 80, 90
Had
kilos.
you skied at all before going on the expedition, like normal skiing?
So the first time I went, I had no money, no experience, no time off work. I've got 4 children, and I couldn't even ski. So it was a massive learning curve for me. And
what kind of got you into it in the first place? Like, how did you decide? Like, it's not the kind of thing that you just go, oh, hey, I'm going to do an expedition tomorrow. It's like something that has to.
Exactly. So, and it took me from kind of deciding I was going to have a go at it, and I just wondered whether someone with no experience in that area could actually get themselves to a point where, even to the start line, to try and attempt something like that. And that the whole thing, from the sort of decision to do it to the finish, was about 5 years.
Oh wow.
Because they don't just let you go and do a solo trip in Antarctica. The logistics company that gets you in and out likes to know that you've got something on your polar CV effectively. So I had to go away and get that. So I went and skied across Greenland, I did some work in Norway, which is where I am now, as you can probably tell by the background. I did some work in Iceland as well, and in the Cairngorms in Scotland, which is not to be underestimated either. And that whole thing was just sort of filling in the gaps from having no experience to actually having enough experience to go and safely, as safe as can possibly be managed, go and do this solo trip. But the why is definitely the hardest thing to answer. I mean, initially it was definitely about personal challenge, but I've done quite a lot of work with my sports psychologist about inspiring others, and just it's the kind of, certainly as a woman, that's really, really important to me, and as a mother as well. I kind of got this kind of this message that just because you've had children, just because you're a mum, it doesn't mean that you should never go and have adventures, that you should never pursue your own goals, that you should, I have a lot of questions actually about, how'd your kids feel about it, or how did you feel taking on something risky? And I can almost guarantee that if I'd been a man, nobody would have been remotely interested in, maybe more so now a little bit, it's changing a little bit, but certainly, those questions wouldn't have been so relevant. And so there's definitely a kind of wider conversation that I want to bring people into, to be like, well, actually, just because you haven't completed your sort of life's goals or your major expeditions by the time you're 18 or 25, that doesn't mean that those doors are closed to you.
As I say, and I mean, you touched on it just a second ago, but how do you how do you navigate around obviously leaving children and that sort of thing? Because obviously people that I know that have children have always said that they find that quite a difficult I guess a difficult time. So
it is really, really hard, and I think it's hard to balance, regardless of whether you are working or not working, or you're working in the home, or you're whatever your circumstances. As mothers, we tend to feel like we're never doing it right or quite right. We're never giving our full attention to to work or kids or our adventurous life. And that you feel guilty all the time regardless, and I might not have got it right, and I know that what I've done is bring my kids along with me for a lot of the training, so they've been super involved in kind of coming out with me. If we went on a family holiday, training was what I did first before we then went.
Oh, it's so cool what mum's doing, so it's very inspirational for them as well.
The complete opposite. They're bored to tears by every time I start when I was in Antarctica, they're like eye rolling and walking off. But I think secretly they are, when they see it how other people see it as kind of something quite different, and it shouldn't be different. It should be, we should all be able to go out and have our adventures. But when they see it like that, they do realize that it is something special. And they're not majorly outdoorsy, most of them.
Okay.
3 out of 4 of them, I would say, are not particularly outdoorsy, but what they are is hugely passionate about their own particular interests.
Okay.
And they totally believe, I've been at this game now for like 6-7 years, and they totally believe that if they're passionate and they work hard and they're dedicated, that they can achieve absolutely anything, and they're really kind of on trajectories to go and do that exactly. But I think the key thing is not, like you said, you don't suddenly wake up one day and go, oh, I'm going to go on an expedition. The key thing is like consistently approaching a long-term goal, I think, and whether that's like a marathon or the 7 summits or a changing career or whatever that is. It's about making tiny incremental changes, like the expedition. Really, it's the same theory that if you're consistent in your approach and you do something towards it every single day, even if it's just 10 minutes, everyone can. It's hard to find the time, especially as a parent, but you can usually find an hour a week or even 10 minutes a day just to kind of start working towards your own goals. And with enough time, that time does add up, and it can add up to a big change.
I was going to say, what would your kind of biggest tip to other women be around achieving those goals, whether it's small for them or big for them, or trying to break a world record, or obviously it doesn't have to be trying to break a world record, but yeah, any kind of anything that kind of changed your mindset, I suppose, when you first started in this?
Yeah, I think a really massive lesson for me is that we're all worried about failure. I'm worried that I'm going to fail, and it's going to fall completely over, and that everyone's going to say, oh, we knew she couldn't do it. And I don't know who everyone is going to be, because people don't say that. But I think we're so afraid of failure. But I think a lot of the time I'm afraid and scared about the environment, or the circumstances, or are my kids going to be okay with this, or am I going to totally mess this up? But being able to carry on even though you're afraid of those things is absolutely the key to making things happen. Because if you can just live with that feeling of being afraid or worried about it and pursue it regardless, because what's the worst that can happen? You're going to fail, but the best thing that could happen is that it's completely life-changing in whatever that thing is. So being able to recognize that, but also being able to kind of live alongside it and just go with it, I think has been really helpful for me.
So not being scared of being afraid, almost.
Yeah.
And also the small incremental changes.
Consistency, definitely. Because I suppose the example is, thinking you want to train for something, go for a 10-mile run and then do nothing for 3 weeks. It's better to do, even if you're just, and it's, it sounds a bit naff, but like turning up for yourself. And even if you put your trainers on and just start going for that run, turn up to the gym and just see how it goes. You might be feeling rubbish, but actually just turning up for yourself and having even attempted it is going to have an effect. It's going to be a cumulative thing, and actually you notice changes then if you keep turning up for yourself and you're like, I can even attempt it, because attempting it is better than not doing anything at all. So just getting out there.
As I say, when you think about like marathon running, or when I was trying to train for a half marathon, it was the first few weeks was actually just doing 2 or 3 shorter runs, because you're just getting your body used to being able to like have that impact and get your body used to that sort of running again. And even though you weren't doing, like I said, a 10-kilometer run, doing 2 or 3 shorter runs was still giving you like a bit more experience, a little bit of extra, and a little bit more preparation for the body. And it's just, and then you incrementally increase that, rather than just thinking, like, how am I ever going to run like 40 kilometers? Like you can't just battle it as like, that's the first thing. It's starting those little steps first.
Exactly. And I think if you think about the whole thing, if you printed your training plan off and put it on the fridge, which I know I've done that in the past, and you look at the whole thing and you're like, this is just running and running for months on end. And if you think about the whole thing, it's too much. If you think about, okay, well, if I can do today's run, then I can tick that off, and try not to think about the whole thing. And then once you've put today's run with tomorrow's run, it's just lots of little bits.
That's a really nice way of looking at it. And like, talk a little bit more around the expedition. Like, what does it involve? How far is it? Give us a bit more of a kind of a picture of what you're going to be experiencing.
So it's good and bad that I know exactly what it's going to be like. So you are flown in from South America in a big jet to a logistics base in Antarctica called Union Glacier, and you spend a couple of days there sorting out your kit and getting fuel and just kind of having a bit of shakedown, sorting out your comms kit, and then you're flown to the start line. And the start line is literally, there's nothing there. There's not even a marker or no fanfare. You just get dropped off by a ski plane. You say goodbye to the pilot, and that's it. You're on your own. And then the idea is you ski from that point, which is on the coastline of Antarctica. So if you looked at a map of Antarctica, it's not by the water's edge, it's actually in from there, because there's 2 massive floating ice shelves. So the continental landmass of Antarctica is a start point, a place called Hercules in there, and then you ski uphill into wind alone for about, my aim is to do it in 35 days, which is 840 hours, which is where the name of the expedition, Project 840, comes from, because I want to be able to use every hour to help drive me forward. So you're on your own. You're pulling your sled with all your supplies, your emergency stuff, your food, your fuel, your tent, and you ski for about 10-11 hours, and you've got a chest-mounted compass, and you set that to your bearing. It's not quite due south initially, because you're kind of weaving your way around known crevassed areas. And around kind of mountain ranges and things, and that's what you do. You kind of get up in the morning, you put all your layers on, which in itself is a bit of a task, because you've got to make sure there's no skin exposed. You've got to make sure you've got the clothing layering system right for the conditions. I would ski for about 2 hours normally, because I've had a nice big breakfast, and ready to go, and then I'd have a 5-minute break and something to eat, and then just keep going like that until probably 7 p.m, something like that. When you put your tent up and dive into it, and it's like the best thing ever, because you've got hot meals to look forward to, you're done for the day, and it's just this kind of amazing sanctuary made of like a bit of canvas and some tent poles, and it's all super light, and it looks kind of flimsy, and you could fit it into a pretty small bag, but that's your home for the night, and your campsite's totally arbitrary. You don't. And the weird thing about being solo, and the great thing about being solo, is that you have to learn to trust your own judgment. So it's very unusual in life, and as a woman, I think we're always kind of looking for consensus all the time. So being able to kind of decide, right, I'm skiing to this time, or I'm skiing a little bit further that way, or this looks like a good place for my tent tonight, making all those decisions yourself and relying on those, and actually realizing that, my God, this works. I'm actually making progress south. I've survived another day. I can navigate, and that kind of realization was pretty life affirming. That's cool. But yeah, it's definitely hard. It's hard miles, getting out the tent in the morning, even waking up and realizing you're still in Antarctica and not like back home with the kids, is that's the hardest thing. And then you're out the tent, you get going, and then it's not quite so bad somehow.
And did you think the last time that you did it that you'd be like, then a few years later going to try and break the record? Or at the time were you like, never again am I doing this? Because I know that even if I'm doing a really hard exercise class and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? And then you're doing this for 35 40 days straight, and you're going back for more.
A bit of both. I think it's a bit like having kids. You forget about all the awful things, and you just remember it as being so amazing. And at the time it was, there were some really tough days, and a lot of crying in the mornings about why am I still here, and the progress you make is so tiny compared to the distance that you've got. It is quite hard to keep focused on the moment, and the skiing that you're doing, and the hour that you're doing, and the day that you're doing. And I honestly thought that this was my one shot. I was never going to go back there. I had to kind of put it all into this, which was really helpful in a way. It made me kind of the mindset was the right one. But once you've been there, it's just it's just an amazing place. It's got this. It's almost like you have a relationship with the place. It's a very weird feeling to explain. Almost like it's almost got a human-like quality about it, where it's just you in Antarctica, and it's about how you relate to the place, and it's so stunningly beautiful, and so kind of, you may as well be on Mars. It's so isolated, and all those things are daunting but addictive at the same time, because you leave behind all the the emails and the traffic jams and the social media, because there's only sat phones, there's no 3G or anything, so you feel very immersed in the environment, and there's something very, very powerful about that I would pretty much do anything to go back there, and this seems like a good way to challenge myself, and to, because I think quite a lot of the time women will say, well, let's just see how it goes, it might not go so well, and not really lay it all on the line. And I'm trying to lay it all on the line to show that you can do that, and actually, if it doesn't work out, at least you're the one that is actually getting out and trying to do that. And sometimes plans don't work out, but that's part of expedition life and part of life as well. So I just think more of us need to be kind of, right, I'm going to do this, and even if you're a bit like pretty scared about telling people, actually doing it, because training for it, fundraising for all of those things are pretty big, but the rewards are huge, even if it doesn't quite go to plan.
Yeah, no, amazing. And like, how are you, I know that you're obviously working with us and you kind of touched on it earlier, but what other steps are you doing at the moment to make this achievable? And also, have you got any tips of ways you're dealing with it so that it doesn't become overwhelming?
I mean, I can't reveal all my secrets.
Okay, fine.
I'm really happy to talk about the Omnos stuff, because it's so fascinating and something that I haven't looked at before. But I want to keep some of it a bit under wraps. But be assured, I'm looking at every single aspect in a very kind of scientific way. I'm working with Bedfordshire University and looking at some data points as to you know, to go alongside the work with Omnos about things like VO2 max, lactate threshold, how I can do that better, and really looking at it as an athletic endeavor, whereas before I looked at it as almost like a logistical exercise of, you know, what are the steps I need to take to make this happen. And yes, it's, you know, the mental difficulties when you're out there are you know, are a big part of it, but this is a completely different, I'm trying to have a completely different mindset about it, to try and view myself more as an athlete, endurance athlete, than a plucky amateur. So, you know, a completely different framing of it for me for this one.
No, and actually a bit more about obviously what we're doing with you in terms of for anybody else watching, we're basically doing some benchmarking tests to see where you are right now, and then obviously see if there's any nutritional deficiencies, anything else going on within the body that we can help support and improve on, and then obviously how that will then play into things like your VO2 max testing, so your performance testing essentially. And then obviously over time we'll keep on testing, doing various different types of tests to really try and get you into the best position, which I guess will also help for you mentally to kind of think, well, I've prepared as much as I can for this venture. And another kind of, I guess, another question, and you don't have to answer this, but and it's a bit more personal, but have you had symptoms or thought about kind of like hormonal fluctuations, or because obviously I think 44, 45, that's an age that, you know, menopause might start to kind of you know, become a thing, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. That's part of why I kind of want to talk about it as someone, you know, my kind of age. And I haven't noticed anything yet, but a lot of people have said, oh, you know, you need to get your levels checked, which is why it's great that we're working together. At least, you know, that part of it is covered. But you know, I'm just interested to be on that journey, I guess, and to see what kind of impacts that might have. And I'm just kind of willing to learn and be open and see what's worked for other people. It's definitely not something that's really talked about much in the expedition world. I've got a few friends here in Norway who I've bumped into who I'm going to ask about it after this call, because it's definitely something that we should be talking about more. And you know, there might be some positive things in terms of things like endurance, which would be really fascinating to kind of dig into.
And also, I think if we don't talk about it and we don't look into it, and people are scared of doing things because of menopause or perimenopause or you know, then we're never going to learn how best to, you know, overcome it and to work with it. You know, it's kind of just like this, it's a bit like before, you know, periods, people would say, oh, don't train on your period, or you take the pill to stop yourself from having a period when you're coming around to performance. But actually now it's kind of going, okay, well, you know, we can't just keep on trying to get rid of it. We have to think, how can we work with it? And the only way you can do that is by doing it and exploring it and talking about it. So I think it's really good that you're kind of open to that. And where can we follow your story?
So I'm on Instagram, I'm at Between Snow and Sky. And the idea behind that was before I started training a lot for expeditions, I really love skydiving. So the whole idea was, it was like those are my two kind of passions. So Between Snow and Sky, or letters. So I document a lot of my training journey on there, and you know, all my sort of, I've got some amazing partnerships with some really cool organizations. So there's a bit more about that on there, and yeah, maybe some more discussion about periods in the menopause. Certainly when I'm on expedition, it'd be dead handy not to have those, because it just adds another layer of complication. And sometimes I just think who'd be a woman on expeditions, because it's, you know, trying to pee on expeditions when, you know, you're not stepping off your skis even, that's a challenge in itself. And yeah, I'm glad to say it's kind of the balance between men and women in sort of guiding and expeditioning is pretty even now, compared to, you know, back in the 70s. They didn't even, so the British Antarctic Survey didn't have women in Antarctica until I think maybe the late 70s, maybe even later than that. It might even be the 90s.
How recent that was, you know, it's
so recent. I know, like the first men reached the South Pole in 1911. The first women didn't go to the South Pole till 1969, and they'd actually thought that women couldn't cope with physiologically couldn't cope with the conditions in Antarctica. And there's actually, I don't think they're better or worse, but there's definitely different ways that women's physiology changes during a long range expedition, in terms of things like metabolic rate and muscle mass, that indicates that we are just as well set up, but in a different way,
Yeah.
as men are. And certainly anecdotally, what I've seen on expeditions is that women have a lot of mental resilience, a lot of mental strength, and I see that a lot when I'm out with on expeditions and with clients. So it's just, it's definitely not something that, although it was the preserve of sort of white middle class privately educated men, it definitely should not be. There's plenty of room for everyone.
Mm. And I'm sure a lot of people will be wanting to ask you this. Where do you get the energy from?
Oh God, I don't know really. I just that's a hard question to answer. I've always been in that mindset of I've always been a very driven person
Yeah.
my whole life, and I kind of get up and fill the day with as many things as I possibly can until I kind of collapse exhausted at the end of the day. And I go to bed really early. I love an early night. That's probably my secret. I just feel like I was always taught that you should never waste a moment, and I'm probably not very good at switching off. I'm probably not very good at relaxing, and that's equally not necessarily a particularly good thing, but I kind of just keep cramming things into the day, because if you don't, you've kind of lost that day and it's gone. And also as a mother, you have to be super organized, because you're trying to juggle work, training, fundraising, and most importantly your family, and try and kind of make everything balance out. And you don't always get that right, but you can't afford to kind of sit around and think I'll do it tomorrow, because then you've lost that time. So actually being a mother, I think, makes you even more kind of productive, maybe, in terms of being able to kind of think, well, I've got this hour now, I need to absolutely cram everything into this, because in an hour's time I've got to move
of not having that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I guess really is that kind of like balance of, because we are in a bit of a world where it's like you feel bad for resting, and I don't have children, but even if I have a day where I haven't done anything, I feel guilty, and I feel, so there is this kind of level of actually trying to learn to allow ourselves to rest and relax and enjoy those moments, but at the same time also appreciate that actually just because you are whatever label you are, i.e. a female or of a certain age, or a certain ethnicity, like just because of these things, actually they don't have to be barriers. And actually, if you set in motion consistent changes, even if it's like 1 hour a day, like you said, actually the community that we can actually achieve quite very big things. So the last thing I guess really is, so we can follow you, and can you repeat your Instagram handle?
Between Snow and Sky.
Great. And we will also share your updates where we can on Omnos. So people can follow the story, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about what we're doing at Omnos to support Wendy. Obviously, if anybody wants to support Wendy, you're still fundraising.
The expeditions to Antarctica are not a cheap thing, and I did, I had to kind of go to corporates cap in hand with no credibility and say support this expedition. And I was very, very fortunate that I managed to get some really great sponsors for my first expedition. I'm probably a bit further down the road at this point with this expedition. I think partly because I've got that expedition in the bank already, that I can go to people and said, I've done a successful journey before. But it's it's definitely not something that's cheap. But companies that want to get involved, it's something really, really, it's a unique thing to be part of, being part of a polar journey. There's lots of different angles with diversity and sustainability, the environmental aspects, and long-term goal setting, completing complicated projects, and really optimizing many aspects of your life to make these incremental gains that make big changes overall. So there's lots of different touch points that might kind of connect with or resonate with different organizations.
And hopefully, supporting someone to break a world record is always a nice thing to be part of.
It's nice because it's a global thing. So it's not just a UK thing. It's although it's the world record's pretty cheeky. It's 38 days. So to take 3 days off that is really really putting myself out there. So there's still a lot of hard work to do between now and when I'm going in December. but you know, time's marching on, so yeah, got to get on with it.
Amazing, cool. So what's next then? What's the next bit for you?
So I'm currently in Norway, and I'm working. So my life was an office job with dreams of adventure, and my life is now as an expedition manager and guide. So I'll be able to do lots of, you know, real time experience polk hauling and skiing with over the next 6 weeks. I'm off to Everest Base Camp over Easter. And then back to the UK for a bit and doing lots of tyre hauling, and really kind of trying to focus on doing things incrementally better, particularly with the nutrition, which is a little bit harder to do when you're away. But certainly something that is kind of at the forefront of my mind at the moment.
Fantastic, great. Well, thank you so much, Wendy. Really excited to kind of keep up to date with everything that's going on. And yeah, I'm sure we'll probably get more questions from people. And if we do, we'll kind of loop you in and put you in contact with anybody who wants to get in touch. But yeah, thank you so much.
Right,
enjoy your 6 weeks in Norway, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hannah.
Right,
Thanks everyone.